Hey YouTube, this is Reds Music Park Fan 62. AEW is starting to reach new lows. So there is a popular streamer that does a lot of AEW streaming on stuff, especially for like Dynamite and Collision and pay-per-views. And he just announced on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, that his Facebook account got banned permanently because of AEW. Here is the thing. This all goes back to Tony. He probably has some team that he's hired and he's paying them pennies. Probably in India or Nigeria or one of those countries where, they basically work for pennies. And they're going around looking on different social sites and banning anything that makes AEW look bad. Am I saying that it's a good move to make? Absolutely not. He needs to accept criticism. AEW is not what it used to be. In a span of almost 6 years, come October, they've gone from filling out 20 to 25,000 seat arenas. They filled out the United Center in Chicago over a rumor that CM Punk was coming back. To now barely filling music halls and like small concert venues. They were in Cincinnati a couple of weeks ago at a building that barely holds, I think it's like 1,500 people. NXT was there back in, I think it was May or June, and was able to fill that. NXT, I understand because of them. The problem is AEW went from filling 20 to 25,000 seat buildings to barely 1,500 seat buildings. That is the main problem. They have literally let so many good talents walk. Especially if it's something over money, over creative freedom, or anything. You have the likes of Penta, Rey Fenix, Andrade, Jade Cargill. She's something in there, but that's besides the point. Blake Monroe, Mariah May. Who's the next person that is going to walk from AEW to WWE? The first person was Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 37. AEW is their own enemy at this point. Tony rather trusts somebody like the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Jack Perry over somebody like Cody Rhodes, and CM Punk. What does that say about AEW? The Young Bucks have literally had viewers, when they come on TV, turn the channel off. They see what else is on. They have, done anything else besides watch it when they're on. Kenny Omega, while he does have his flaws, at least keeps viewers. While I don't like him personally, there's people who do, and that is mad respect for them. But you're telling me Kenny Omega is one of the few people in that company who can keep people. Meanwhile, you have people like the Young Bucks who literally cannot keep people. And now they're going through this comedy gimmick of, what is their names going to be this week? Are they going to come out to No Music this week? And all this, since they lost their EVP status at All In a little over a month ago. The Death Riders have literally made people go, nope. This company is in a position that is not good. If they want to say they're the number 2 company, that is on them. But the fact, TNA has a lot of momentum going for them right now, with them selling out buildings, with them having, different people from TNA on NXT on TNA, constantly. And this is not just a me situation. In the women's division, there's only 3 women who were essentially over. That's Toni Storm, Mercedes Moné, and now, if you want to say it, Alex Windsor. The only reason why Alex Windsor is in AEW to begin with is because of her fiance, Will Ospreay. I guarantee you, if Will Ospreay came to WWE, so would Alex Windsor. But Will would rather do the life AEW has, because he's only there once or twice a week. Now, I get it with family and such. The problem is Tony Khan is a wrestling mark. He doesn't know fact from fiction. He can't get certain things out of his head, and he wants to keep doing like this is a WWE video game, or he has his action figures that he plays with in his room every night when everybody else goes to bed. There are people in AEW that are popular. I agree there. But the problem is they almost seem to go nowhere. Julia Hart has now formed this random tag team with Sky Blue, which they've been tag team before, and Thekla, however you say her name, called the Triangle of Madness or something, and now have this relationship or whatever with Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. Where did that come from? And the fact NXT on every Tuesday night can have at least 2 women's matches and at least 1 to 2 women's segments, while AEW has 1 women's match and barely 1 women's segment a week. What does that say? they just had one of their big 5 shows of Forbidden Door. Next up is All Out in Toronto here in 3 weeks. The problem they have is them constantly poking WWE. There is a reason why now WWE has started counter-programming them, even with NXT. Say what you want about NXT, but since November of last year, AEW's only beat NXT around 3 to 5 times since November of last year. There was a span of like 3 or 4 months where NXT essentially kicked AEW in the butt every single week. There are things in AEW that does not make a lot of sense. Like the Death Riders. They just seem to linger. As well as this and that. They wonder why they can't get sponsors because of some of the shenanigans that they do. Like in the steel cage match they had last night with Jon Moxley and Darby Allin. I'm not going to go into detail. I'm sure you've seen that video. It's stuff like that. No sponsor wants to have their name attached to something like that. Unless you have something like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game. Or some sort of Street Fighter game. Or something like that. That is geared more toward teenagers to adults. Instead of families. Say what you want about WWE and the enormous sponsorship bubble they have. But they have something for everybody. They have stuff for kids like Mattel and all of that to, for the women, Maybelline, to the adults like Real American Beer and all of that stuff. AEW is their own worst enemy, and it is just going to keep biting. It's going to keep them from succeeding. The only type of people who like AEW style are either the hardcore independent fans or someone who's anti-WWE. That's it. There is no middle ground. Now, there are families who prefer something like AEW. That is fine. The problem is trying to convince a young child to be like, is that fake or real? Is that blood fake or real? Stuff like that. And the next main problem AEW is going to have now, especially for Collision, is starting this weekend, is college football. College football has already started. There were a couple of games on Saturday. Everything else starts this weekend. The main problem is when Collision comes on, it's going to be in that prime time football slot. So you are getting away from the afternoon games and going into the evening games. And this is stuff where typically a lot of the big name schools play. So you're talking about the Alabamas, the LSUs, the Texas, all of these type of schools. And they're going to be on channels like ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN Plus, ESPN, ABC, CBS, all of that. If AEW does not watch it, they're going to find themselves in an interesting position. And you have to wonder what Warner Brothers Discovery thinks about AEW to this point. Because I bet you, if you ask someone from Warner Brothers Discovery how they feel on AEW to this point, they're going to tell you something different than if you ask an AEW fan. The next thing are the fans. Because AEW calls themselves the Sickos. But yet, they are talking all this stuff about, how they get 500,000 on Max, how they get 1 million people on Max. When people from Warner Brothers Discovery have said AEW is not getting that amount of people. They're getting maybe 15,000 at most. 15,000. So if you combine that with what they get on TV every week, that is still not good. And AEW is going to put themselves in a very bad position if they don't watch it coming up here soon. Because the next pay-per-views they have going forward through the end of the year is All Out, Wrestle Dream in October, Full Gear in November, and World's End right after Christmas. WWE is going to counter program every single one of those. And they have already announced their counter programming for All Out with WrestlePalooza. As far as Wrestle Dream and all that is still yet to be determined. But the main problem is AEW is putting themselves in this position that is not good. And it's only going to get worse.